It may be doubted whether so small a number of men ever employed so short a space of time with greater or more lasting effects upon the history of the world. That's a quote from George Otto Trevelyan. He's a historian talking about
The Thundercats.
Thundercats, the Battle of Trenton, A New Hope, Battle of Trenton 2,
Electric Boogaloo.
Return of the British.
Dang it, I get them all wrong.
You're all wrong, man.
I thought that one was about Maria from the wrong side of the tracks. That Puerto Rican girl.
Oh, yeah. Maria, I just met a girl named.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Leonard Bernstein. And and the Battle of Princeton, the return of tradition.
The Jedi.
Yeah. And my goal today, I have a goal today. We're gonna be talking. See, you don't get great, important information, and you don't get history like what you're gonna get today. You will have likely never heard of this man, but we're gonna talk about him, and I'm going to try to convince my main man, Joey here, that it was because of him that we that this man single-handedly, in one moment of time, in a certain space, held the entire American enterprise in his hand.
Because of me?
Because of you.
Dude. I mean, I want to thank the Academy. I want to thank my agent. Thank God, of course, for making me better than everyone else. Yeah, man. Have a beverage. Yeah, have a beverage.
Yeah.
So, who is this?
Dude, we're going to talk about one of my great heroes.
Shanks.
I know.
Sorry, I'm sabotaging you because this is I know nothing.
Well, no, you should.
So I'm sabotaging you.
Yeah, I know, because you don't want to be convinced that this is the most important man in the entire American enterprise.
History of the universe.
This is Brigadier General Hugh Mercer.
Salute.
Oh, man. I just hearing his name makes me smile. See? I literally heard about this guy, I don't know, a couple years ago. And I learned about his story, and it blew me away. And I thought, why am I almost 50 years? I mean, yeah, we'll say almost 50 years old and just learning about this man today. And so
I'm 37 and just learning about him.
So there you go.
You never know how old you're going to be when you learn something new.
You learn something new. But hopefully there's some, younger than 37 folk here that will learn about the great Hugh Mercer and why he is so important, who he is. And, I think he's one of those guys. He's one of those, he's not Washington. So he's not like, he's not a deity like Washington is portrayed so often.
Right.
Hugh Mercer's a relatable guy.
I've heard a phrase used about, like in the same context.
Yeah.
That if Washington, if we set aside Washington, obviously, but Hugh Mercer could be described as I've seen other military leaders who aren't maybe marquee names described, no less serviceable.
Yes. And he's just a fascinating life, and really one of the more fascinating lives, I think, of that I've heard. I mean, it's just an incredible life that he lived, what he did. And we're going to start back. We're going to start back in 1726 when my man Hugh was born to some Presbyterian preacher in Scotland, of all places.
What? A Presbyterian in Scotland?
I know. Never heard of such a thing. And he, and we don't know a whole lot, but we can, conjure up some ideas about some, wild and wacky adventures that he went on in his youth. I'm sure he did. But he eventually went to the university.
I heard he got caught wandering around an East German forest. I mean, I don't know. There was a story about a kid, just a poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed.
Yeah.
Then one day, he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground came bubbling crude oil. Texas tea. And then the first thing you know,
Yeah.
first thing, he's a millionaire. He went back home and his family said, move away from here. Now, what are you doing around here? They said, you know what?
What? Tell me. Tell me.
California is the place you ought to be. So you know what he did? He loaded up the truck and he moved to Beverly Hills. Swimming pools, movie stars. That wasn't Hugh Mercer's story?
That was not Hugh Mercer's story. I know. I gave you the wrong book on purpose.
I took notes and everything.
I could see that. Beverly.
Yeah, cement pond. Said Mr. Drysdale, the banker.
Right.
I took a lot of notes that now I see have nothing to do with Hugh Mercer.
Well, good thing you have me here.
It's always
I'll be your straight man today.
You'll be my cruise director.
Yeah. As we head to, the grand, by the way, I've got these books about him, and the writing in this one is so fun. I just have to read this introduction because it's just the Highlands of Scotland, land of brown heath and shagged wood, land of the mountain and the flood is probably how they pronounce it, has always been celebrated in song and story as stern and wild mountains, its dark, silent glens, its deep, lying locks beneath the shadow of the hills. That's how I imagine Scotland.
I don't ever imagine Scotland.
That's
It never comes into my head.
Yeah. Okay, well.
I mean, I'm not Scottish.
That's true. Are you? No.
I'm not. I'm British.
Purebred British.
I mean, I know Scott. I'm English. Let's say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Scottish people are technically British, but I'm just English.
Okay. Well, you were on the wrong side of. I mean, you're kind of on the right side of this.
I'm on the right side. Yeah, this war. That's the thing, though. Honestly, I mean, not to be funny, but when you go back and it's like one of these things. Like, obviously, my big thing is Algernon Sidney and all that, and I'm like, ooh, I wonder which side my family were royalists or parliamentarians. Well, both.
Right.
Obviously, you get to the point where you're like, you have so many ancestors alive at that time, and I'm talking just direct line, and it's like every time I would see that this guy fought against the royalists, I'm like,
Yeah.
But of course, you're going to have that. So yeah, I mean, if I could go back in time, I would fight on Hugh's side,
of course.
But
yeah.
But what war are we talking about, Michael?
Well, we're talking about the war between the Jacobites and the Hanoverians. We're talking about King James the Second or the Sixth, whoever side you might be on at that time, was booted.
I didn't get any credit for that, and I'm feeling hurt.
I'm just moving on.
Okay, got you.
I'm plowing.
Heard, chef.
Plowing.
Heard, chef. Heard.
Trying to get all the pecans off the train. I mean, tree.
Do you know what? You say pecan. I say pecan as well.
Yeah.
Because when I was little, my grandma, that I've referred many times, she, some people say pecan.
Right.
And so I said, and I called her Nanny, R.I.P. I said, Nanny, is it pecan or pecan? And she said, son, pecan is the nut. A pecan is what you use at night when it's too cold to go to the outhouse.
That's a wise woman. I think my Texas grandmother would have said the same thing.
Shout out to all the Texas grandmas.
Imo, love you.
Is she still alive?
She's not, but she knows I love her. Imo. By the way, she's the one
that makes you cry.
That makes me cry.
She's still the one.
She's still the one. Still the one.
Oh boy.
Anyway, but she's the one that I tell the story about the golf course.
Yep.
Yeah, she's my, insurrector, and she gave me my love for liberty and my hatred for tyranny of all sorts, even if it is golf course marshals.
Yep, all of them.
Always overplaying their hand.
If there's one group of people responsible for our loss of liberty, It's golf course marshals. I'm looking at you,
True that.
famous O'Hanahan.
True that.
Aren't all golf course marshals Scottish or Irish? Scottish.
Scottish. They're
Yeah,
for
that's
sure
right.
Scottish. Yeah.
And if it's no Scottish, it's crap.
Right. Heed.
Heed, no.
By the
Move.
way, it's funny. My family, I do have a bit of Scot in my family.
Mm.
And they were actually on the Hanoverian side.
Mhm.
And in fact, because they did not, whatever great times, whatever, because he did not take the Jacobite pledge, was beheaded, and he is called the martyr. He was a reverend.
Rest in power,
Yes, brother,
Monsignor.
grandfather Dudley.
Yeah.
Love you. You just, it's okay though. It's all right. There is forgiveness. And
If you see Charles the First up there, tell him I said suck.
Did you say tell me he said psych?
Suck it.
Oh, psych it.
And Charles II. Either one of them.
Either one.
And John Locke while you're at it, because frankly, coward. I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. Sorry, I know.
We're getting all like
Hey, okay.
the
make
gloves
Let's
are off at the
stay on Hugh Mercer.
Return Traditions podcast.
Let's leave John Locke out of this.
Yeah.
Forever.
So Hugh, back to Hugh. He went to medical school at the University of Aberdeen. By the way, and I have to add this, and you know this about me. I think some of the people may not know this about me. I'm a musician by training. I'm not a storyteller. I'm not a historian, but I love this man, and I love what he's all about.
I love you too, buddy.
Oh, dude.
Wow, gosh, that felt weird, but in some ways wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
All the right in all the wrong ways.
If it's wrong, I don't want to be right.
Anyway, so Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was James's son, was fitting to make a break for the crown, and he gathered up a bunch of Highlanders, a bunch of Catholics, a bunch of Scottish folk who were kind of sick of the British being down on them. And frankly, the Brits weren't that nice to the Scots. That's how Brits are, kind of bastards in a lot of ways.
They are very much.
Yeah. So supposedly they had the help of the French. So they thought they had some French soldiers that were going to meet them, but when Bonnie Prince Charlie, the Great Pretender, showed up on shore, they didn't show.
Yeah, they have a habit of that.
It tends to happen.
Except, I mean, to give them all due credit,
right?
They showed up. They showed up to the United States or to America in our war. They
did have their ships out there ready.
Yeah. Hey.
I'm all for. Dude, yeah.
There's no Yorktown without the French. Let's be honest.
No, that's true. And
and a storm. I mean, seriously, you ever stop and think about that, man? Like, how do people not believe it? Okay, good. Don't believe in God. Do your thing. I don't care. But seriously, the number of times, there's like that. Is it James Furling, the guy who wrote that book, Almost a Miracle? Because he's like, I don't believe in God really as such, whatever. But you go through the history of the War for Independence, you're like, something did all that. Right. This miracle storm, this change in the weather, that. I mean, yes, the French, without the French, there's no Yorktown, but there was also that crazy storm.
And there was that. Yeah, and there's a lot of those instances throughout the War for Independence. Excuse me. Oh yeah.
I feel like I'm not letting you talk enough about Hugh. Why don't you just talk about Hugh? I'm taking you off course with my yammering.
It's okay. It's all right, man. So Hugh, at the age of 19, became a surgeon, which is that's pretty rad too, if you think about it. Like, there aren't many surgeons at 19. And we don't know why. I suspect it's probably because liberty was the word being used by a lot of the Jacobites at the time. He took up with the Jacobite cause. There's some really fun traditions that they would have. For example, at dinner parties, they would when it was mandatory, it was in stone that you had to, God save the king, and they would God save the king at the end of the meal and throw their
You remember the John Adams miniseries?
yeah.
What Sam Adams does? Remember that part?
I don't remember that part.
When they go to whose house is it? John Dickinson's house? No. Yeah, because he's from Pennsylvania. So at his house, and
Yeah.
they have the same thing. It's John, but this is, pre-Declaration of Independence. And so Samuel Adams is there. John Adams is there. And at the end, they're all like, God save the king. And Samuel Adams is like, God damn the king. And I'm like, that's my boy right there.
Dude, love you, Sam. Dude,
It's enough to make you want to drink beer. Just to say, if his family still owned it, I would probably do that.
Yeah. Well, man.
It's worth. That's a nobility that I would support. And be like, I don't drink alcohol, and
unless it's Sam Adams.
Unless it's right. If it's Sam Adams, I'm gonna put it away, and then they can't convict you of anything you do wrong when you're drunk on Sam Adams.
They wouldn't convict me because at that once that happens, I become the blind Rabbi Micah. You do not want to see the blind Rabbi Micah.
And P.S. we still have the 3 strikes you're outlaw. If I get pulled over one more time for DUI, I mean, we're talking conjugal visits. Let my wife know.
Okay, I will.
Because I'm gonna be. Well, you don't want to.
No. I don't. I'm just glad I won't be with you during that conjugal visit.
Dude, that's weird. Why would you be with me?
That's what I said. That's
why you are the blind. You're already drunk right now,
dude. I'm drunk.
No, I just can't get another DUI.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will. I'll be your designated. Your DD.
Thank you, man. And everybody knows I like the double D.
Especially after a Sam Adams.
Oh, dude, a nice dill and.
So anyway, there we were.
What's a D word?
Dab.
No, like a food.
Oh, hot dog.
No, a D that starts with D, man, not hot dog. Dog, comma hot. Like what do you want? I'll have a dog. What? Comma hot. Next time I go to the ball game, I'm gonna do that. What do you want? A dog. Well, they'll know what I mean, but I'll be like, dog, comma hot.
Dog,
what's a food that starts with D?
Dragon fruit.
Dragon fruit. That's what some dragon fruit dipped in dill.
Oh, that's how it's done.
Goes down a treat.
That's how it's done.
Woo. Anywho, so sir.
So he takes up with the Jacobite cause. He becomes a surgeon in the Stuart army, and they actually do pretty well. Like they do a lot better than what people imagine. They were kind of like the Arizona Diamondbacks of last year. Like nobody expected them to go as far as they did, and that was the Jacobite cause. They were kind of just like plowing through. They were winning some wars, and then the British got serious. Like, no, we can't have you near London.
Yeah, I mean,
so there's a very famous battle, the Battle of Culloden, and 1745. So I mean,
wait, I have notes on that one.
Ooh. What do your notes say? That's a callback. Those who know.
16th of April, 1746.
1746.
Jacobites crushed.
They were crushed, and that it was,
smart.
Yep. My good friend. I don't have any good friends anymore.
They've all died.
They did die because of that
Chernobyl.
They were eating too much dragon fruit dill. Dill.
Dude, he caught it. He said dill.
So
I think it's pronounced deal. You people in the West pronounce it dill. The rest of us say deal.
Oh, deal.
We don't actually.
I don't.
It doesn't matter. What's the dill?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure.
So, they were crushed. Crushed.
Crizzushed.
Oh man, and the butcher of
Like you when you asked that hot girl out to the prom, and she's like,
yeah, that was.
she's like, "Are you asking me out for one of your good-looking friends?"
I'm like,
And you're like, "That's the feeling the Jacobites had."
that's kind of it, yeah. Because I said, well, I am that good-looking friend, and she's like, oh, well, I'm not going to.
They were crushed.
I was crushed,
Mm.
and they were crushed, and
Mm.
they were um yeah, yeah, the it was not a good scene. If you were a Jacobite at that time, what would happen is that this guy, they called him the butcher of uh starts with a C. I'm losing my brain. Not the butcher of Culloden. Anyway, he was a bad dude, and he would take you down, and he would hunt you down like the Jacobite
Like
dog
on
that
that,
you
what
are.
was that movie? Inglorious Bastards.
Yeah, like
The Bear Jew. Remember that? Remember the Bear Jew goes after? Yeah, remember that? How he like we're in the Nazi killing business, and brother, business is good.
that was that was
The butcher.
that was the butcher. That was the butcher. And
I don't think that's a nickname you ever want.
no,
You know what I'm saying?
no.
Even if it were like, inshallah, one day we get to straight up guillotine a bunch of traitors. I don't want that to be what I'm remembered for.
That's right. I mean,
I want it to be remembered that I stood up for liberty and I, you know, was a disciple of he who granted us graciously that liberty. But I don't want people to ever say he was the butcher. You know what I mean?
that would be
Yeah, that'd be bad.
that'd be bad. That wouldn't be good. But this guy, he didn't have your care for
Yes.
he was happy to be called the butcher of whatever he was the butcher of. But
If
it
you
was
could be called a
definitely
nickname, what would it be? Like a war nickname?
a war nickname,
Yeah.
dude. Iron Eagle.
Iron Eagle. Are we just choosing 80s movie name? Red Dawn, Red October.
Come on, that's
Iron Eagle is pretty tough. Yeah.
that's pretty.
I want to be Jaguar Paw.
Jaguar Paw. That's good. That's good.
Like
Maybe
I want to fight for the Maya.
Odd
I want to
Guffaw.
beat the Spanish.
I want to be called Odd Guffaw.
That's a good. What does that mean?
Means strange, loud laughter.
Oh, Odd Guffaw. Dude, I thought you were like, my name was like Jaguar Paw. So I thought you were like giving some Maya thing that you knew. I was like all impressed for 0.5 of a second. And then you're like, Odd Guffaw.
That seems to be my role here on this.
No, you take it away, dude. I'm sorry. I just
Odd Guffaw. No, this is good.
no. You've done your damage now. Go ahead and tell your little
This is
story.
my little story about Hugh the Merce. He hides.
Which he had to do, right?
He had to hide, yeah, because the butcher was after him.
It wasn't like you lost, now go home.
No, it was definitely not that.
It was lost. You lost. Now we're going to make sure you never are able to rise up again.
Yeah, that was.
It's kind of like the Romans in Carthage,
right. And if you know that history, what they ended up doing, not only murdering a bunch of families, they took away their the things that they loved the most, their kilts.
The British did that.
that their pipes. Oh, their pipes.
Bagpipes.
They took those away.
They even when they were calling from glen to glen.
From glen to glen.
Well,
I'll take the high road.
That's the English word. No, it's okay.
They're bastardly butchers. So
was that his nickname? You couldn't remember? Oh,
No.
starts with a C.
No, yeah, it was like the butcher of Cromdale.
Okay, just run with it. No one's gonna know. They're learning this history from you,
That's
mate.
true.
They just make it up. That's what I did.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. So he left. No, so he stole away. He didn't steal away, but he was allowed, not by the British, but he was hidden onto a ship, and he came to
Stowed away.
stowed away. There we go.
I think you said that, mate. You
Gosh,
said stowed away first.
stowed away. Trust your instincts.
Why don't we stow away? little yacht rock for the people.
Came to America. Came to Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania,
Quakerville.
the Sunshine State.
Yes. And he started to practice, started a and I can never get this word right.
Oh boy,
Academy Archimedes.
apothecary. Dude, are you American? Are you? You're Swedish, but you claim you're not. Right? Isn't that the deal?
I'm just from California. Man.
Apothecary, a drugstore.
Yeah, it's a drugstore.
Yeah,
it's a drugstore. I knew what it was. I just didn't know how to say it.
Apothecary. Forget about it. It's a drugstore. Drugstore. Forget about
it. I mean, I think he was probably a DO as opposed to an MD. Is the impression that I get. But I'm not sure.
We don't even. Yeah, we're not really. I know I mean, you've deep Googled, my man, but I did. I read a couple things.
Yeah.
I didn't deep Google here. We're not talking. This is like page 1 of Google that I did.
Google.
I didn't.
Yeah.
We're not talking 6th page of Google, but I read that they said that as far as his training in medicine, we don't really know.
We don't know, but we do know he signed up as a surgeon.
Right, as a surgeon. I mean, he obviously had some sort of training, but whether it was like full blown MD, we don't know.
Right, the pickings may have been few for the Jacobite army.
You can imagine. So
so
you'd be grateful for it. No, honestly, I mean,
seriously, you know how to,
But a man like Hugh Mercer is not going to sign up to be a surgeon because as a prank.
Right, right. So he started, and he didn't like Pennsylvania. He wanted to be kind of more of a, he didn't like the city life, didn't like the mafia that had come into town. Probably didn't like the British that were there.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, right? I mean,
And so he moved. He was a country doctor. I mean, he was a country doctor for years, and life was good until it wasn't. And I think a good way to think of what happens next is to think it's almost a continuation of the same war, but just on a different. It's in America, and that is it's this like these the French, the British, the Spanish, these big kind of superpower European powers that were kind of all in each other's face, vying for power and wealth, and they had this amazing land over here, and they were all kind of gearing up for, and so we have this thing that us in America we call the French and Indian War. I know you know butchers in Britain call it the 7 Years' War. 7 Years' War. Okay, I got that right. So they and here's the interesting thing: Hugh Mercer signed up. He became a captain, and it's interesting because now he's kind of fighting on the British side, which like that happens.
But it makes a really, I mean, this is something that I liked about the story. I mean, I only knew Hugh Mercer as an American general during the War for Independence.
Yeah.
Anything that happened before that, I didn't know who he was until you came along. But the thing I like about it, yes, you can say there he was. He literally lost everything he had.
Yeah.
Fighting against the British in Scotland. He comes to America fighting for the British. And that would look to anyone like that doesn't make any sense. But it does make sense when you realize that his commitment wasn't to Scotland, or let's say it wasn't anti-British, it was pro-liberty.
Right.
So if the British happened to be fighting on the right side of that battle, he was on that side.
And I also think he felt, I mean, I really do think he felt a great duty to the people that he worked with, his neighbors. And these were all British. And they saw themselves as British.
Right.
And for him, it was more that loyalty of family, community, liberty, specifically liberty, because if you think about it, that's the one like strain through all these stories that we're going to tell, that he was always a staunch defender. He was always, he was a country doctor, but he was a soldier for liberty, man.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, yeah, he wasn't a soldier who practiced medicine. He was a doctor who was forced to be a soldier
Right.
because of situation. Yeah.
And he gained enough experience. And I, all the stuff I've read, like his men loved him. The people that eh, all of his commanding officers, everybody said nothing but good about him. They thought he was smart, that he was. I think George Washington at one point said that he was always pressing forward. He was always on the attack. He was always looking forward. And he did some amazing things, which we're going to get into. But so he joins up and fights for the British in the French Indian War, becomes a captain.
Wait, do we? I mean, just in case, and I'm, this is not me derailing it like I have been the whole time. This is actual, like French. I don't know if people know, and I want to make sure they know so that the story makes, because what we said might not make sense. We call it the French and Indian War. It was the British and the Americans versus the French and Indians.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't the French and Indian War, meaning the French were fighting the Indians, because where does that leave us?
Right.
It was, we call it the French and Indian War, but it was basically England versus France in America. And so Americans were British. So French and Indian War, those two groups were on the
They
same
were
side.
side. Right.
England versus the French and Indians, and the Americans over here in America, we were British. So we fought for Britain.
Right. And it really was a power struggle that the French were trying to get their foot deeper into, into the Americas. They had Montreal, well, Quebec. Is that right?
Quebec?
Quebec.
Yeah.
But they wanted to go further. They wanted anyway. So, he goes and he becomes. I love my talking. He goes to what we now call Fort Pitt.
Oh no, what we now call Pittsburgh.
What we now call Pittsburgh. Right. He goes to where we now call Pittsburgh, and he basically
But it was called Fort Duquesne.
Fort Duquesne.
And then Fort Pitt.
And then
Fort Duquesne, then Fort Pitt.
Then
The same
Pitt.
place, and now we call it Pittsburgh.
Right. And he kind of like, again, he's undermanned.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's not able to do all the things I think the British officers want him to do, but he is able to maintain a stable fort there. He's able to do some skirmishes and at one point, he and the general.
Well, while you're looking for that, I wanted to tell us before you
Yeah.
to Fort Duquesne when he was at Fort Shirley.
Yeah.
And so they had a battle against the Delaware Indians. He gets wounded in the arm, which my man got wounded a lot.
He did.
I don't know what it was about him. Maybe chicks like scars. Maybe that was his deal. I don't know. But so
I'll show you mine.
See my stuff. I've got so many scars, dude. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
It's like a freaking constellation. It's like there's Orion's belt and there's Cassiopeia. You don't even want it. It's terrible. I was a bit reckless when I was younger. Anywho, so he's at Fort Shirley and he has the battle against the Delaware Indians. Things go really south for that. And he's wounded. And then so he escapes miraculously again through the Pennsylvania wilderness. Like Dwight took him out there.
Yeah.
And he was going to see, he's like, because camping is really about, you want to do it yourself, see what you're made of.
Right.
So Dwight drove him out. No, I'm just teasing. That was Michael Scott. We're talking about Hugh Mercer. So, but anyway, has a battle. He escapes miraculously into the Pennsylvania wilderness where he has to go 100 miles to get back into friendly territory. And he does.
Yeah.
But see, that's the kind of thing you can't know in advance, because I'd be like, how far to British territory? 100 miles. No, just shoot me, scout me, whatever. Whatever it is you people do, eating monkey brains, whatever you do it to me, because I'm 100 miles. No.
Well, and at one point he
No, wait, I want to read the story.
Okay,
Because you might say what I let me say. I know some things too, Mike.
Okay, tell the story.
Jeez, boys.
This is a great story.
So he survives. He makes it out 100 miles to whatever. And they actually, this is they write a newspaper story about my man.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, he comes out and they're like, hey, who are Hugh? I know, but it felt so good, man. I had been trying organically to do that the whole time. And I ain't finna lie to you, it felt good. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Excuse me while I do another odd guffaw.
So they interview him, and now this is what they write up in the newspaper when he escaped the 100 miles through the Pennsylvania wilderness. He living 10 days on two. So it took him 10 days to go 100. That dude was hauling.
Moving.
He was hauling for sure. But I mean, living 10 days on 2 dried clams and a rattlesnake and a few berries. And then they tell later in the story, I didn't write it all down, but later in the story, they say he actually came upon some beef and he's like, no, I prefer the rattlesnake.
The beef looks pretty gnarly.
The beef looks kind of beyond jerky.
Right.
Whatever that next step, you know how it's like the next step, whatever that next step in the spectrum of beef dryness is. It was that next band in the spectrum beyond jerky, like shoe leather, maybe. Right. I don't know. But he's like, there was a farmer who offered me some beef, and I'm like, you know what? I still got half a snake.
I'm good.
I'm all right. I'm just gonna chew on this snake and these few berries. What's that in your pocket? Dried clams. How far are you going? 100 miles.
I don't know.
I'm going 100 miles. How do you know until you get? I'm going 100 miles. Don't ask me a question. I'm Hugh the Butcher Mercer. No, that was a different guy.
He's not the butcher. He's not the butcher.
He's not the butcher. But that's a cool story. First of all, I mean, all of that put together, 100 miles, and what did you have?
With a broken arm.
With a broken arm, right?
Right.
Dude, I don't think and my wife can attest, if I had a broken arm, I'm a milk it, man.
Right.
I'm not walking 10 feet, much less 100. Shoot.
Where is
my arm hurts? But Hugh goes 100 miles, gets there, and then they write the story, 2 dried clams and a rattlesnake.
Yeah. It's insane.
How far would you go if they said, okay, you've got to walk. What do you get to put in your pack to eat? 2 dried. First of all, I don't.
Well, and
dried. What does that mean, though?
It's not like he was walking down the street either. I mean, he was like, he's in enemy territory.
Yeah, I mean, I think a better, maybe if we got the full newspaper report.
Right.
Because see, this is the thing. And my wife, I'm what's known as follow-up question guy.
Right.
I'm gonna ask, as we say in Memphis, I'm gonna ask that next question. If you say to me, I just walked 100 miles eating 2 dried clams and a rattlesnake, guess what my next question is? Where'd you get that rattlesnake, right. Man? What? Tell me the story, man, how you got that rattlesnake. Like I get the clams, dried clams. I don't know, the beach. I don't know where you get them. Maryland. I don't know. I don't care. But how you got that rattlesnake?
That is a good question.
Did it bite him in the bad arm and he didn't feel it? And the snake didn't know, so the snake was just like, "Arr!" And he's like, I can't even feel you, snake. And the snake was just digging in, like, come on, Hugh. And Hugh was like, I can't feel it. And pretty soon the snake just tires out. And Hugh just bashes it into a tree. I don't know what happened. I don't know how he got the snake. My point is, we need a follow-up question.
That is a great question. That is a great follow-up question. I think this is also the same story where he got separated. And
you got to keep them separated.
You got to keep them separated. And he ended up going to, he ended up coming across some men, some of his men, or some British, and they're talking. All of a sudden, the Indians are coming. He scrambles into a hollowed out tree, and they boogie off. Right?
Okay, don't just. Why do you elide over? He scrambled into a hollowed out tree.
I mean,
Dude, if dude did nothing else in his life,
seriously.
then hide from the Indians in a hollowed out tree. He's 10 times the man I am.
I'm telling you, he's
Just period.
just
Done.
and he's and by the way, those men were, unfortunately killed by the Indians who found them. He was not found, and he continued his journey. This is why I said I don't think he was like walking the I-15 to to
Well,
the
it wasn't the. I have my notes. Pennsylvania wilderness. For those of you scoring at home, it's Pennsylvania, which means, well, literally, Sylvania means wilderness in Latin. So he was walking through the Penn wilderness. You're welcome.
well played.
Chicks like Latin.
They do.
I mean,
And broken arms
and scars
and rattlesnakes. Eating rattlesnakes.
Oh,
That'll.
dude. If I had a story where I ate dude, that's the only story you're ever going to hear me tell.
Right?
And I'm gonna make up some stuff. I'm gonna tell you that. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. I'm gonna make up the hitting the thing against the snake with against the tree with my bad arm.
Right.
Shoot, it ain't gonna be like I came across a dead rattle. Dude,
No,
come on. No one ever gonna know. It was just you and that rattlesnake, and he can't talk because you ate him.
That's right. We know who won.
We know who won that battle. Just give us the backstory and make it up. Make it good.
Make it good. Make it so good. It's not a song.
I don't know very many songs.
I think I just made up a song, which I do from time to time. So Hugh, known as Hugh the Hugh, who ate the snake that rattled, he makes his way back, and he is, I think he showed up his I always imagine this part too. Like, let's say the British officer happened to be like at the Battle of Culloden also.
Oh, dude.
Right?
What? Well, 'cause that did happen in the War for Independence, right? There's in the War for Independence. If you read, what's the name of Middlecoff's book in that series? Oh my gosh. Anyway, Robert Middlecoff, who wrote one of the series about the War for Independence for Oxford collection, he tells that story about how you had that situation happen in the War for Independence. You'd have American soldiers who just 10 years prior were fighting with the guys that they're now supposed to kill.
Right.
Yeah. That's some weird stuff.
I mean, and I mean, I always put in my brain, like, if the men left him, like, not purposefully, but like they weren't exactly sad to see him gone. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I can make up a story.
Yeah, but I mean, well, it would make for, politics, as the saying is, makes for strange bedfellows.
Yeah.
Your loyalties are gonna shift if you're a principled person, because so many people are simply partisans.
Right.
Right. I mean, we have the existence of a single party ballot, right? You can just pull the Republican lever, right? So for us, it's hard to imagine someone that could be in that position. But for him, it was just about principle, and whoever fought with him, and who fought against him, fought against him. But it would be
and also
crazy for the that situation.
And then I think about, like, here he comes walking in with a rattlesnake skin, right? And he's got this story. He's got this broken arm, and he's been gone for 10 days. And he shows up at the fort, and the maybe his colonel or whatever is like, dude, like, is like upset that because he's kind of showing him up. He's like,
oh, I see. Yeah, I see where you're going with
like
that.
the men are like, dude, you're the man. You ate a rattlesnake?
Yeah.
You hidden a log? Oh, give me some of that. And the officer, the colonel's like, looking at him side-eyed.
Well, I once ate some marmalade that was out of date. What? I'll tell you, I've got a story to match that one, Hugh. Once, when I was dining with Mamar, her servant girl served us a bit of marmalade that had been out of date by 2 days. I ate it bravely.
Poor shame, poor shame.
What? So me and you kind of the same, Hugh.
Hugh,
We're about the same kind of person.
pretty
I
much.
ate Mamar's spoiled marmalade,
And you ate a sweet.
and you ate a delicious rattlesnake. So I'm kind of more manly than you, Hugh.
Exactly. I think I'm thinking that's what happened. But he, who knows?
You should put that in your thing. The conversation between Hugh and the colonel that
colonel.
ate the spoiled marmalade.
That would make for
Right for a whole marmalade song. We are Lady Marmalade.
I think it's going in.
Lady Marmalade, but just change it. Spoiled marmalade.
Ooh.
So I don't know.
Yes.
Just I'm not trying. I'm just
No,
spitballing.
yeah, I like it. I like it.
Just
I like
spitballing.
I like where your brain.
I'm just I'm just an idea man.
So he during this time he meets another junior officer, a guy that nobody's ever heard of, a man that I know is so obscure that when I say his name, you're gonna be like, "Who's that?" But he met this fella, this major. I think he was a major.
I think he was a lieutenant colonel when they met.
Was he
I
a
think
lieutenant?
maybe he
Okay.
was a lieutenant colonel.
Oh, that's right, because I think he was
Yeah, yeah.
part of
Mhm.
what. Yes, this man with wooden teeth. I mean, who would follow a guy like that? George Washington. Yes, they met. They became fast friends.
Mm-hmm.
They did, and Hugh so much so that somehow through this, first of all, they promoted Hugh, I'm sure against the colonel's wishes, to major. That it was he became Major Hugh, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Major Hugh.
Oh, I have the thing here. Let's see. He was promoted to colonel.
Promoted
Mm-hmm.
to colonel.
So he
Oh,
was
and that's when he was in charge of the entire fort, I'm sure.
right at Fort Pitt. Yeah,
Fort Pitt.
until 1760. Yeah,
And once 1760 hit, he did not go back to Pennsylvania.
Mm-mm.
He, in fact, went to Fredericksburg, Virginia, and started an
apothecary drugstore.
A Walgreens.
Yeah.
Started a Walgreens in Fredericksburg. Started a business. Had brought in some shiny new talent
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that didn't work out. So they started a new one. He started with another partner. There's a great, it's called the Rising Sun. He spent time at the Rising Sun pub,
Mm-hmm.
and he met some pretty influential guys there.
Yep.
He became doctor to Martha Washington. Wait, no, Mrs. Washington.
Yeah, George's
mom. Martha's the
wife.
Confused.
Mm-hmm. They're both Mrs. Washington.
They are both Mrs. Washington, but yeah. So George's mom became, as well as Colonel
James Madison.
Colonel Madison. James Madison's father was also one of his patients.
How kooky would that be?
Right?
You're in the room with George Washington's mom, and in the waiting room is James Madison's dad.
Right.
I mean, how crazy is that? It's like, who's my next patient, Sarah? And, we're pretending his nurse's name's Sarah.
Right.
Who's my next, or Hannah? Who's my next? Yeah, Hannah. Who's my next patient, Hannah? James Madison Sr. Whatever. Come on in. You know what I'm saying? None of those people were, okay, George Washington was famous after the French and Indian War. He was a British Army hero, which is weird. They had a parade in London for George Washington.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, they did. He was a hero of the British Army. He was, he would have, had his brother not died, I think George Washington would have ended up in England in the British Army regular.
Oh, wow.
Think about that crazy.
Whoa.
you know, choose your own adventure, how it could have ended kind of thing.
Right, alternative universe.
G-Dub ends up over fighting for the other side. Who would have been? Who would have been our guy? Who would have been the indispensable man?
Like seriously, that is true. Like
Hugh Mercer?
Hugh Mercer.
No, I'm not.
No, I think you're right. I think you would have been.
I'm gonna throw something at you.
All right.
Benedict Arnold.
Oh, dude,
Benedict Arnold.
he was the real deal until
He was the
wasn't.
real deal Holyfield until he decided to you
Mhm.
know, take the money and run.
Yeah,
But you had, you anyway.
there were some
Hugh
guys.
Mercer. Hugh Mercer.
He could have been.
He could have been the man.
He definitely had the skills, and
He could have been the first. Think about how weird that.
Dude, that would have a Scott as the first president.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be awesome. That'd
Yeah,
be
but I mean, just saying, so George Washington was famous, get no mistake. But George Washington's mom
Mhm.
was not no one would have known who she was. I mean, in her town,
Right.
That kind of thing, because town, we used to be close with our neighbors. But it's not like it's not like today. If your patients were Barack Obama and Bill Clinton's parents, people would know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't know who Barack Obama's dad is, but assuming that we did, we know who his mama is. I mean, his mom.
Yeah.
But anyway, but the point is, it'd be different today. But back then, can you just imagine if you get to like just bibbity bobbity time travel,
Right.
and you're standing there in Hugh Mercer's, drugstore, and he's over there treating George Washington's mom, and there's James Madison's dad.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy!
It'd be crazy. And the other people that are there, John Paul Jones is there. He becomes friends with John Paul Jones. He becomes friends with John Jay. Oh my gosh, not John Jay. He becomes friends with the Now I'm losing my brain. This is why you don't have a musician do a.
No, I mean it doesn't matter. Famous people
Yeah. That that you've heard of. Mason.
George Mason.
George Mason.
Oh yeah,
he was friends with George.
Pretty
Mason.
big name.
Yeah,
pretty big name.
And and in Virginia, I mean, come on, how many people are there? We know that. I'm sure he knew. Give Me Liberty, Patrick Henry. I'm sure he knew. I mean, all those guys. They were, and he was very. I mean, he was a doctor. He was a wealthy doctor, and I mean, I call him a country doctor because he was. He was a country doctor by training. He was, but I mean, he definitely he was a shrewd businessman too. He owned several lots in town. He was able to gain a lot of influence. And he met a young lady, Isabella Gordon, and they married and started having children. Started having a family. I know
those two kids,
Hugh, Isabella.
I knew they were going to get together. I knew they were going to get together.
Yeah, it was fate.
I mean, yeah, they broke up a few times. I could tell those two kids were gonna make it work.
They were gonna make it happen.
I just had a feeling, that Huabella, that was their ship name, Huabella. I knew there was hope for Huabella, because I'm like, man, I'm gonna tell you the truth, because I don't front, I spit the truth.
I know you do.
Huabella, if they hadn't have made it, ain't no hope for none of us.
No, that's true.
Ain't no hope for nobody.
They were,
Huabella. They were.
Huabella.
It was the benefer of their
of 1775, probably 1762 or something.
17. Well, I don't know when they got married, but he opened his apothecary in 1771.
Okay,
and that was before the apothecary. So
yeah, so
1770 probably around there.
Yeah, that time. His brother-in-law owned that pub, the Rising Sun.
Oh wow!
And there's some. I do think about that. Like, when we think about a pub or something at that time. I mean, it really was the community center. It was where the men would come and communicate, see what's going on, talk politics, talk, how's the farm, that was where that would happen. And I mean, I'd love to be a fly on that wall to hear some of those conversations with,
Oh,
Hugh,
for sure.
all those
If
guys.
you could understand him.
That's true. He probably had a great
Oh, he had it brogue.
bro.
He had a rough. I guarantee he was as rough as a cob. That dude's brogue, man. Maybe that's why sometimes his men quit. You know,
Could be.
he had a history of his men being like, "My enlistment's up, I'm out." Maybe they were just like, "Dude,
It was hard on
I
him.
would stay longer, but another day of listening to you with that accent, I'm gonna stab myself in the ear. I
Right.
can't with that. Dude, speak English."
So, um, and very successful, doing well, having kids, doubly well, and then um, the British, just as I mentioned before, they're kind of bastards.
Can we just say they FA'd and they FO'd?
They they did, and this was in the FA portion of that statement.
We're still in the FA portion of the show.
Right.
They don't FO for a few years.
No, but things are getting a little bit heated. We're talking 1774, 75, and but in Virginia, my understanding, it was a little bit more peaceful than up north with Sam, our boy Sam.
Yeah, you had a lot more. That's a historical thing that people don't talk about much. In the South, in Virginia especially, you had a lot of cavaliers. A lot more gentlemanly strain of immigrant, and so you have a bit more loyal to the crown, which you found down south a bit more loyal to the crown, as the cavaliers were, and so you had a harder time down south. I get the Americans. We had a harder time because the British found a lot of friendlies, because beginning at the very beginning, a lot of those who came to the South were gentry. That is to say, they were second and third sons of wealthy families,
Right.
or at least
Mills.
merchant
Yeah.
families, and so they were loyalists. They were they supported the crown, and so he.
And the other thing to think about it is they really did see themselves, and we don't talk about this enough. They saw themselves as separate countries, separate states. Virginia wasn't just a state in this United States of America. It was its own government, its own place, had its own history, had its own people, and for
As it does now.
as it does now, as it does now.
We just deny it now.
Right.
But
for example, just the other day we saw the Baltimore Bridge fall,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
I don't know about you, I felt a little bit like, dang, that's a bummer. Where if that happened in, I don't know, Canada, I may have cheered. No, but if it happened in another country, I wouldn't have thought as much of that. I thought, oh, that's a bummer, but it
Right.
would have been. We don't have that. They did not have as much fealty to this satanic cult that we call Washington D.C.
They had no fealty to any central
Right.
government.
Right.
I mean, they did. There was, because there wasn't.
Wasn't.
The first Continental Congress was, well, as we've discussed, Congress. It's a collection of ambassadors from different countries, and so they had no sense of. In fact, I mean, Benjamin Franklin said. Benjamin Franklin's like, okay, so when they were debating the Articles of Confederation, which is around this time,
Right.
Benjamin Franklin said, well, here's the, because there were some states that were kind of holding out. And Benjamin Franklin's like, look, this is only supposed to last while we're fighting a common enemy. What if we lose? It doesn't matter. If we win, once the enemy is defeated, then everybody goes back to their respective homes, and we're not united anymore.
Right.
Right. His whole join or die that he literally drew, that wasn't of a union of a political sort. That was joined together against our common enemy. But I mean, there are literal letters from the first Congress where it's like, well, don't worry about, or then the second Congress, don't worry about it. This isn't the creation of any sort of central government.
Right.
We're, first of all, we call it Congress, which gives away the fact that we consider ourselves a, you know, a gathering of ambassadors from distinct countries, like that word means. And he's like, second of all, when we defeat our common enemy, well, we're not bound by anything
Right.
anymore. That's, you know, we're just bound by a common enemy, and that's all. You
Right.
know, yeah.
Which makes when I putting that in perspective, when you hear, for example, Patrick Henry's famous speech, which is around this right at this time, you know, of give me liberty or give me death. You know, it took a lot of um, I don't know what the right word is. Like you had to think like, oh wait, there is an enemy at our doorstep, even though they may not be, um, you know, a lot of the problems are happening up north. Um, like you had to, I think they had to have some foresight to see that this was going to be a problem for them too, because it would be as if somebody attacked, you know, Mexico City, and like, are we gonna? Should we go fight Mexico City? I mean, I don't know. I, you know, so I think as these people were thinking about like whether they should fight
That's,
the British.
well, that's a big mistake they made, though, Mike. The British.
Mhm.
It's such a. I mean, I wish you could just take people to make them pause and just think through things they've been taught and just dissect, just deconstruct this in your head. The mistake the British made that ended up resulting in a thing like Patrick Henry in Virginia saying, you know, this stuff's going on in Boston,
Mhm.
everything. The mistake the British government made was treating the 13 colonies as one. Because to them, Canada and the 13 colonies, those were that was British North America.
Right.
And to them, that was just, those were our children. They're going to do what we say. That was, if they had taken those 13 colonies and treated them as we did living here as 13 independent little republics, we would still have the queen on our money because it would have been, there would have been no common enemy.
Right.
But the problem was they just wanted to get as much, you know, it's like one of the British ministers once said during the war, he's like, the real secret is we need to get the honey without disturbing the bees. And the problem is they disturb the bees.
Yeah.
And so that caused this war because they could have very easily said, all right, we're going to have a policy for Virginia, which would have been lenient
Mhm.
because filled with loyalists. We're going to be lenient. Where then you have a policy for Massachusetts. We're going to lock down a little bit harder. But they didn't do that. I mean, yes, they ended that, you know, the Boston Port Act was only Boston, but to them, when they would make decrees about why they
Well,
do
like the
that,
Stamp Act, that was throughout all
that
the
was
colonies.
everybody. But they didn't say the when they would excuse the things they did, the British, when they would explain it, first of all, they'd be paternalistic, which would anger people.
Right.
Don't tell me what to do. Don't say you're my parent and I'm your child, because we both know that ain't how that went down. And the second thing they would say is, you know, as our colony and as we are your majesty, we have the right. And, you know, Parliament literally said, we have the right to legislate in any case whatsoever.
Right.
That is, you belong to us. And the colonists were like, that's not how that started. But also, okay, now you're saying you're grouping all of us together.
Right.
And that caused South Carolina and Massachusetts to be united where they would never have been otherwise.
That's a great point. I appreciate that, because that really um helps understand like when Patrick Henry, because there was a lot of consternation. There was a lot of questioning at that convention, the Virginia convention, where they were talking about whether they should, you know, go to arms, and it would, if it wasn't for Patrick Henry giving a stirring speech and saying, "No, they're on the, they're our brothers are out in the field already. We are at war already. give me liberty or give me death, like it would have been a different story.
Once again, that speech being printed 3 days later in a Boston newspaper,
Yeah.
but for, I mean, you talk about that great leap forward.
Yeah.
I mean, but for, again, Johannes Gutenberg, nobody knows there's no war for independence.
Right.
Because you don't have, I mean, Cato's letters, we don't have Cato's letters firing people up in the 1700s. They're printed in a London newspaper. How are you going to find out 3,000 miles? You're not. Except for the fact the printing press exists. We're going to print it up. We're going to bring 1,000 of them to Boston and just hand them out at the
Right.
at the port. And so Patrick Henry, that he gave that speech a couple of days later. People in Boston are like, "All right, we got some help down south. Let's do this.
Let's go." And they did. And so, and this is where Hugh comes back into our story, because of his his experience both in Scotland and mostly in the French Indian War. He was up to be head of the First Virginia regiment, and they had a vote to decide who would decide, and he lost by 1 to Patrick Henry, and the word is he lost because he was a Scotsman, which honestly kind of makes sense.
I mean, no one knew what he was running for. The accent.
if only he spoke English.
Is he running? What's he running for? I can't, dude. I can understand. Like, I don't think he's speaking English.
Patrick Henry.
Just how do you even spell Hugh? There's a lot of silent stuff in that. Let's Patrick. I know how to spell Patrick.
Mercer.
Can you imagine they were just like, yeah, that's a good idea, and then they get their little silent ballot, and they're let me get a. It's like, so who are the candidates again? Hugh Mercer and Patrick Henry. No, Patrick. I got that. Two good English names, Patrick. But you're a 2 first name guy, right, Pat?
Oh,
You're 2 first name Jones. I'm gonna call you double first name Jones. and is foreigner.
Right.
So then it was just like, all right, everybody in favor of 2 first name Jones, raise your hand. 3. How many for foreigner? 2. 2 first names. You're up. Let's do it. Strap them on.
And by the way, there is a great quote. I gotta read this. This is because later on, Hugh ends up being the leader, the colonel of the 3rd Regiment of Virginia, and eventually is promoted even further, which we'll get to. But he one of his men was actually promoted to major later in the war, and I just got to read this. This is so great. When he overheard General Mercer express his disapproval, so at this point he was a brigadier general. General Mercer expressed his disapproval at the promotion of Captain William Washington of the 3rd Virginia Regiment to the rank of major of a troop of cavalry. And the other officers confessed their surprise at Mercer's position, especially given that Captain Washington had received a promotion for gallantry. And this is what Hugh Mercer said. And this, I think, when I read this, I thought, man, this is one of our guys. This is one of us, or who I hope to be. Let me say it that way. We are not engaged in a war of ambition. If it had been so, I would have never been accepted. I would have never have accepted a commission under a man who had not seen a day's service, alluding to the great orator and distinguished patriot, Patrick Henry. We serve not for ourselves, but for our country, and every man should be content to fill the place in which he can be most useful. Dude, that guy had his priorities right.
Yeah, I mean, the humility, because he's right. Patrick Henry wasn't a soldier. Patrick Henry was a lawyer.
Right.
But situations made him a soldier. But he was a soldier with no experience, and Hugh Mercer had already fought in 2 wars.
Mm-hmm.
And,
it would not have been humility is the right word. It- many oh man would have seen that as a slight, shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. His humility. I mean, if you take and you aggregate his humility to his courage,
Mm-hmm.
and then double down with his commitment to principle, and you've got a guy that is uh, every ingredient
Right.
in the recipe for hero.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He, I think he, absolutely recipe for hero. That's him. Um, so he becomes the head of the Third Regiment, and is called to fight up north with Washington, and he soon becomes promoted to Brigadier General. Washington trusted him, trusted his not just his loyalty, but his uh, ability to lead. Oh, there's a great story, by the way, with the Third Regiment I wanted to tell. Where there's
Here's a
some
little story you'd like to tell.
about
Three young brothers you know so well.
know so well. That's it.
Started way back in history.
I know the rest of this, but I don't.
Go on,
I mean, I do know it.
tell Hugh's story.
Hugh's story. I'm focused. So Hugh, nice eye roll.
I meant nothing by it.
All right, brother Will. So, um, but there were some men that were kind of not on the program, shall we say? They were very much they're causing trouble, and were leaderless, and Hugh Mercer put an end to that. Let's see if I can find that quote. I thought I had it marked. Um, yeah, he put an end to it. They called him in and said, "Hugh, we need to you know put these people down." He took away their weapons, threw a few in jail, um, and then made them prisoners, and then basically said, "Guys, we are here for our liberty. We are here not to um, uh, we're not here just for our own ambition, as he said earlier. We're here for your wives, your children. Um, like stand up and fly straight, brothers." And they did. They turned it around. And they absolutely became part of that regiment, and became loyal to Hugh. Um, as I mentioned, he was promoted to Brigadier General, went up to fight with General Washington, and here comes some craziness as far as um, we're getting to the end of 1776. Um,
Well, the weird thing that I noticed when I did my little bit of study
yeah,
was so when Washington briefs Mercer on his mission,
yeah,
he briefed Mercer July 3rd, 1776, which of course to them meant nothing.
right,
Well, they back then July 2nd was the day we declared our independence because that's the day it was voted on. But they wouldn't have they wouldn't have known that in the field. I mean, maybe the next day, maybe by July 3rd, maybe they knew, but I doubt they would have known at that moment. But the point is, you think about the weird, confluences like that, right? You say we've got Congress who's doing their whole thing and declaring independence, but you've got Washington, he's out there literally declaring independence means nothing. Like it's
yeah,
not worth the paper it's printed on if we don't win this war.
right,
And so, but you've got to think about the whole situation of would that have made General Washington happy? Yeah, I mean, yes, because either way, by this point, it's the end of a noose. It's the end of a rope for
Right.
them if they don't win, right? And so, I mean, even if they win, but he gets captured, right? I mean, the British are coming. That's what that was all about, right? Was, they were trying to capture Samuel Adams and anyway, but the point being that, and John Hancock, but there they are, July 3rd, 1776. And it would, I don't know, I can see them being like, yay, we got to put this off. We got to celebrate, because like I say, back then, July 2nd was the day, because that's the day we voted on it to declare our independence. And they would have been like, yay, let's celebrate. But Washington's like, let's save the celebration till we win.
Till we win, right?
Right. Let's not pop the champagne until the last whistle blows. Right.
Especially as we've been I mean, they started with 20,000 men, and now they're
things weren't going. They weren't going good.
Not good.
They weren't going well for the good guys. That's for sure.
No, it was not. It was. They were in much need of bank shot.
What's that?
They were in much need of a bank shot.
Yeah, they were in need of something, and it's like, but just to think them standing there and, yeah, let's all give the men the day off because we declared independence. And
right, that's gonna do us no good when
right. That's when we're dangling off the end of that British rope. I don't think any of y'all gonna be like, but we declared independence,
right? And
I like declaring bankruptcy.
It kind of
because if you declare bankruptcy, like if you just declare it, it doesn't really matter. You have to actually
declare bankruptcy.
It's like that's what they did. They just stood up in Philadelphia. I declare independence. Like
right.
what did you have to do something more than that.
Right.
What do you have to do? You have to write it down. Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. TJ.
Well, wrote it down. Now they got to win something.
Now they're out in the field. General Washington's telling, look here, I got a job for you.
And he did with his Flying Dutchman.
That whole story was it's like the Delta Force.
Right.
It's so when I read that story, I mean, I knew that there were types of those types of story throughout, but that Hugh Mercer was given command of what they call the flying camp.
Yeah, the flying camp.
Dude, first of all, that's a cool flying camp is a cool name.
It's way better than Iron Eagle.
It is better. It's not as good as Jaguar Paw, but it's cool. Flying camp. And he's like, so your deal is to keep New Jersey from being overrun.
Right.
We want to protect New Jersey. You're in charge. And he's like, so where are my men? And he's like, oh yeah. No, we're going to have like your regular, like, he's like, have you heard of the Delta Force? He's like, no. He's like, well, someday there'll be this, because George Washington was a time traveler, in case you didn't know. But anyway, he gave, the flying camp. So they're like, this is this bunch of guys that, we're maybe not going to have the uniform on when we do the stuff we do.
Right.
Maybe we, now and then have
to down low.
Yeah, we have to bend the law sometimes, and it makes me wonder, like George, I mean, they were friends in the French Indian War. So I would like to think that, like, if let's say you're George Washington.
Yeah.
And that you knew you had to protect something and you needed somebody who was unquestionably committed to the cause, virtuous, experienced, but also had no trouble,
right.
Maybe,
knew where those lines were and
the
how
shadows of the law, the penumbras of the law. And I would like to think that I would be a kind of person you'd be like, yeah, that dude, I want him to do that.
Joey, you're my
flying camp.
No, I do think that I mean it's wild and yeah, that was his job. He was to go out, protect New Jersey, and also get information.
But when I have my I don't.
Oh, by the way, he only had like 400 men. Like it was.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't like here's your whole battalion. Right. It was like, you see that guy over there picking his teeth with the Bowie knife? He's one.
He's one.
You see that guy cleaning his gun, resting it under his chin? He's another one. And it's a real crack squad.
Right.
But I'll say, can I tell you something? You know how, like, I always tell people, find out how what role your family played in history. what went on? Make it personal, man. So the the crossing of the Delaware.
Yeah.
Well, the New Jersey side of that
Yeah.
was my family's land.
No way.
Yeah,
No way.
truth. Charles Wolverton, look it up.
That's
Yeah. So isn't that great? I mean, it means nothing to me.
no, that's pretty rad. Though,
Other than
seriously.
that's my I think it's my 10th great grandfather.
That's cool, man. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, but find everybody. It's not obviously everybody's.
You're
gonna
probably
have-
all related to Joe, so it's your land too.
Yeah.
'Cause this land is my land. This land is your land.
This land was made for you and me. But the point being, everybody has the story. I mean, literally, don't let history be antiseptic and inert. History is just a written down record of the behavior of human beings. Find out what the humans whose blood flow in your veins, what were they doing at the time? What were they doing? Do they have journals somewhere? Go to the house if you're in the East Coast, like the house that Charles lived in is still there, and it's a bed and breakfast today.
Wow.
And it's still called the Wolverton Inn.
No way.
Yeah.
That's
So,
hip.
but my point is, there's just as likely to be a Leavitt Tavern,
Right.
and that kind of thing. So it means so much more to you, and you find out so much more about yourself if you can do the little bit of investigative work to find out how your family intersected with history, because it makes it more alive to think that's crazy that George Washington got out of a boat and my grandpa or whatever, was like, "What's up, G-dubs?"
Yeah, right? Oh, that's pretty sick.
Yeah. So I mean, but find out for yourself. Do that. Find
Absolutely.
out. Maybe you're kin to Hugh Mercer. That'd be pretty dope.
Dude, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that'd be very.
I mean, yeah.
Anyway,
Because he left quite a legacy. So now we're coming to the Delaware, and things are not good at all. It is bitter cold.
do you know what Delaware?
Delaware.
New Jersey.
To the Delaware.
Do you know what Tennessee?
What?
The same thing, Arkansas. I should be ashamed, but I'm not.
Oh boy. Thanks, Dad. Wow.
Like I've insulted General Mercer.
Yeah, I think he's
So sorry. Go ahead. Put your story up.
That's all right. I'm just making a musical out of this darn thing.
I mean, we all gotta have a hobby, I guess.
I guess. So we come up to, Delaware time, and it's not good. It is, they they need a win in the worst way.
Yeah, they are running. They're stacking L's hard.
They really are. By the way, it's interesting. I learned about General Lee and how he was, I guess, up north a bit, and Washington was trying to get him to come down. He was like making the call, "Hey, come down," and he was refusing. And he was in the middle of writing a letter to Washington, complaining when the British showed up and took him away. So serves you right, Lee. But it did. I think it was General Lee. If I didn't get it right,
Yeah,
look
it's only
look it up.
it's only a history podcast. Why bother about the facts?
Don't let it get away with a good story.
No,
or
go.
joke. For that.
Or joke. Oh, I think that was a personal shot, sir.
Yeah. Well,
Knock, knock.
who's there?
General Lee.
General Lee who?
Generally, I don't go knocking on strangers' doors.
There it is. I'm sorry, Hugh.
Action.
So,
The Delaware River.
right. So
We need a W.
we need a dub. We need a dub. And interesting enough, because they stole General Lee, they took him captive.
Mhm.
The other general who was loyal to Washington was bringing his troops down. And but they needed a win, and it was getting to be cold, and they knew that once that river froze, it was skidatza. It was over. It was, yeah, they were doomed. They would see those nooses probably before the beginning of the year.
No, I mean, they probably would have been, before New Year's would have been a special celebration for the British if they hadn't got across that river.
Right. So they met, they had a war council, and as we all know, they decided to cross on Christmas Day, Christmas night. And there's a lot of people that actually think that Hugh Mercer was not just involved in the planning of that, but came up with the idea that it was his action, his
idea.
The yeah, as Washington said, he was always looking forward, never looking to retreat. And so they made that decision to go cross, and man, they crossed, where we find again, Battle of Trenton 1, A New Hope, and they take on the Hessians. The Hessians don't know what's coming, and by the way, this is another, like, we talk about the turns of history and the weather, like, because it was so bitter cold, and to imagine, and the as they talked about in their journals later, they couldn't see in front of their face. However, that actually ended up being to their advantage, because
the Germans couldn't see in front of their faces either.
And so when they came up, it was 8 o'clock in the morning when they should have been up and ready, routed and go.
But again, another, not a miracle in that. I mean, it is a miracle in that case, in the sense that no one could be seen, but also they did, doing it the day that they knew that the Germans would more than likely be hungover.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you take what you find, and if you're coming up and you've got to cross this river, and you don't take the day off because it's Christmas,
right?
But of course, that wasn't a thing. No. In the 1770s, it wasn't like, let's take 2 weeks off for Christmas. Right. Christmas literally lasts one day, dude. What are you talking about?
But it was unusual for battles to happen.
Yeah, it was unusual.
And it was and Howe had sent his men basically into winter quarters, or was working his way into
100%.
And that was I mean, there was just that window of opportunity that Washington and his men took advantage of.
Right, but we say those phrases, and I know that we all say them, took advantage of. That's, those 3 words, there is a lot of courage, a lot of discipline, a lot of commitment, a lot of, characteristics that we don't have. Fortunately, our independence was won before the excuse factories were built. Because for us, there'd be oh my goodness, can you imagine asking, one of us to do that? First of all, it's Christmas Day. I want to be with my family.
Right.
It's freezing out there. There's way more of them than there are of us.
And I got shoes.
We can totally wait a couple of days. Let's just camp out here, wait a couple of days. Right? All of these things. It's so dark I can't see my hand in front of my face.
Right.
The excuse factories would have been, you know how it is. They're open 24 hours a day nowadays. But in 1776, it was like, well, we have to do this.
Right. And
so the excuses don't exist.
And this goes back to what you've talked about, what we have talked about on this podcast, that there for any great liberty endeavor, there has to be a people prepared to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't vote our liberty back. We have to go and take it back.
Yeah.
And these people were willing to do what it took. And I'm sure, I know it took some cajoling. I'm sure the men were not thrilled to do a 5-mile hike.
No, but isn't that the definition of courage?
It is exactly the definition.
Acting in spite of your fear.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't mean you don't say, wow, okay, but it doesn't look, all of that. You're allowed to voice that. But when the rubber hits the road, you You follow the command, you do the thing.
Right. And they did. And this is one of the things that I didn't realize is so they took Trenton. They beat the Hessians, and they're sitting there, and Washington's still realizing, all of the upper command is realizing these men are leaving in a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
This is not good. And I thought, I am always imagined it like they won, they were happy, woohoo, let's go get liberty. But that was not what happened. What happened was they won, they were happy, and they were ready to go home.
Well, it's someone else's turn.
Right. They were ready.
Well, there's not a. It wasn't a professional army.
No.
It's for liberty. I'd done my time. Now the
Somebody
guy
else.
you swapping off, right? You stayed at the farm while I did my year. Now it's your turn. Well,
Right.
I have to go to the farm, and you do your year. It's not a matter of I'm out. I did. I'm out. It wasn't
Right.
that.
No. It was.
Yeah. I believe in the cause, but
But I got to feed my family.
I got exactly. I mean, why? George Washington didn't return home for 8 years,
Right.
and George Washington died penniless.
And by the way, the cause was so bad before that crossing that Washington tried to make arrangements for people to skedaddle from Mount Vernon. How are they going to get everybody away? I mean, it was not good, but it was still not good because even though they won, as you said, it was somebody else's turn, and Washington first tried to bribe them. He said, "Here's $10 for everybody. Here's $10." And by the way, $10 is like $1 million today's money. So, I mean, just saying, like, it's not the same.
I don't know if a million.
Maybe a little hyper.
Maybe the math ain't mathing on that. Because I think
I only count to 4. I only spelled a G, man.
I got you.
But they, but that didn't work. In fact,
But wait, if you only spell to G, how do you spell 3?
Just count.
Gotcha.
1, 2, my ictus. Anyway,
You're giving me the ictus right now. Oh my! I mean, one of the takeaways. It needs to be emphasized. The crossing of the Delaware. It is more likely than not that was Hugh Mercer's idea.
Yes,
that's a huge dude.
And we never hear that part of it.
But that's because that's who he is, man.
Yeah,
he doesn't want the credit.
Yeah,
he's not. He said it at dudes. But by the way, did you pay attention to the last name of the dude that was getting promoted?
Yeah.
Washington. Maybe if, Uncle G-Dub is in charge.
Always getting the credit.
It's like, how did you get? But the point is, he's like, we're not here for your ambition.
Right.
We don't know this. None of us know all these stories about Hugh Mercer because Hugh Mercer didn't care if you knew or not.
Right.
He cared, I have to do what is right. If I do that, well done, thou good and faithful servant, and that's enough of a reward for me.
Yep. Absolutely.
So no one's ever taught that, the crossing of the Delaware, Hugh Mercer.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's, man, it's one of those things. I feel fortunate in a lot of ways. One of the ways I feel fortunate is that when I came across the name and the basic story of this man, that I looked just a little bit deeper and found out that he was, in fact, the real deal.
He was the genuine classical definition of a hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
a man of wisdom and virtue that loved his fellow man enough to sacrifice for the good of all, and not to do so for personal credit or personal acclaim or anything like that. Otherwise, we'd have, when's the last time a biography of Hugh Mercer was written?
At least, I don't know, 100 years.
Oh, well, I think there was one like in the 40s,
yeah,
right?
Which is this one right here.
Yeah. So, I mean, how many, there's probably been 10 books about George Washington in 2023.
Right.
I'm not saying Hugh Mercer is the same or on an equal footing with George Washington, but I'm saying, do you ever wonder if we don't get taught about these heroes on purpose?
Oh, that's what I thought. I thought,
Because
why have I not heard this?
no one thinks George Washington, if you're, George Washington is a name that's become almost impotent to us because we just have images in our head,
Mm-hmm.
right? And his courage, his valor, all that. Like you said, you didn't know he was a hero in the British Army.
Right.
Yeah. But none of us are ever going to be taught that because I think that our lack of education, our lack of inspiration, because our school isn't designed to inspire. So we don't get taught about Hugh Mercer because if it
Mm-hmm.
were designed to inspire, this podcast would be the most boring thing ever because everybody would be like, you left this part out of the story. You left,
Right.
No one's going to do that because no one knows the story.
Right. And we all have heroes that we can relate to, and it's so important that we learn about these people um, that are they're right here. They're anyway. It's because if you can get that inspiration, if you can get that inspire, maybe just maybe I'm talking to myself right now. Maybe just maybe when the time is right and I need to act like Hugh Mercer, I'll know how to act because I read what he did.
And maybe, just maybe, Hugh Mercer's your 10th great grandpa. I mean,
Yeah,
seriously,
it's possible.
You look into it and you're like, I want to, and then you find out, but the
Yeah.
point is, there are plenty of people from that era worthy of the designation hero. And we don't get taught about it because we're just supposed to keep certain stock images in our head because that prevents us
Mhm.
from wanting to be heroic ourselves.
And those who they want to make heroes are people like Alexander Hamilton.
Oh boy.
Right? That's yeah. Anyway, okay,
Rest
so
in peace, Aaron Burr.
amen. He shot his shot. So by the way, it was at this time that where I mentioned that quote where about the promotion. And I want to read one more thing from this era, from these days. General Mercer admitted that Captain Washington, the person that was promoted to major, was a good infantry commander, but he insisted that that did not mean Washington was destined to be a good cavalry officer. I have seen good captains make indifferent majors, announced Mercer, and he ended with a bold declaration. Again, this is January January 1, New Year's Day, 1777. My views in this contest are confined to a single object, that is, the success of the cause, and God can witness how cheerfully I would lay down my life to secure it.
And he wasn't American.
He wasn't American.
Nope.
It was the principles of liberty.
But did he try to get a law passed in Scotland to have them increase the taxes in Scotland to send to America to help us be free?
He did not, in fact.
But he believed in the cause. So what did he do?
He came and fought for the cause.
There you go.
That's
If you're
right.
you're so gung ho to set the Ukraine free from Russia, get yourself over to Ukraine, get a gun, knock yourself out, Holmes.
Right.
Fight the Russians all day, every day. Good luck finding them. Wink, if you know what I mean. Good luck finding a battle over there. But let's pretend that it's really happening. You go over there, knock yourself. If you believe in it, dude, go.
Right.
Go today. Show that you really believe.
Set up
Show
a
that you
charity.
believe in it. Don't steal my money and call yourself charitable.
Right. Yep.
Get your candy butt over there and show that you believe in Ukrainian freedom. It's just, I mean, right?
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
These examples,
It goes
nothing
deeper
has
than
changed.
just-
Nothing has changed, man. If you wanted to, Hugh Mercer didn't like you know, try to get a law passed to help support the cause of American independence from England.
Right.
No one hated the English more than that dude,
Nope. Right.
right? But he's like, he did not, he thought, I support the cause of liberty. I'm going to get on a boat and go support liberty, and I'll probably get killed.
Mm-hmm.
But then that makes him a hero. But today, if you support giving money to Ukrainian oligarchs,
Then
you're a hero.
right.
You've done something heroic, right? No, rubbish. You've done nothing. You've weaponized your vote because you're too much of a wuss to steal my money, so you make the government do it for you. Don't worry. Notes are being kept. Angels above you are silent notes taking of every action. So do what is right.
And I'll be reading those books. So we come to the Battle of Trenton 2,
Electric Boogaloo.
Boogaloo,
Big Igloo.
the British strike back.
The Empire Strikes Back, literally.
Right.
A New Hope, and then now we're on Empire
We're on
Strikes Back.
Yeah, I got a theme here. And
Oh,
and,
this. Oh man.
and what's cool is Washington sends like a small group up to just slow, because at this point Howe and his men.
Howe is the British commander.
Yes,
by the way.
thank you. Where the British commander Howe is heard the fighting in Trenton and is trying to bring his men down to support, and they what happens is I lost my train of thought. How did I do that? I don't know, but I'm gonna go and
The British ambush them.
the British ambush them, but they don't. My understanding is Washington sent a small group up to slow them down, to keep them from coming, and or to keep them from coming as quickly as they could, so that the Americans could get across the river and into safety before the British retake Trenton.
Right. The problem is British scouts see
Mm-hmm.
the British scouts were at a pub,
Right. That.
and they went by the pub, and they're like, "Who are the?"
That's
and
right.
so they go back and say, "Hey, guess what?" And then they double time.
Right.
Yeah.
So Washington skedaddles across the river, and there they are for the night. And General Howe's upper management, his officers are imploring Howe to go across the river and finish the job. Like, they have him, and the rebellion is over.
Yeah, you got them where you want them.
It's done. And Howe decides to let them sleep, let the British sleep for the night.
Yeah.
And Washington has another war council and decides, you know what, we're probably smart to mosey on out of here. And they end up taking a road less traveled by a.
Did it make any difference?
It in fact did make a difference.
Did it make all the difference?
The difference in the world.
Hmm.
So they take this road to Princeton, because what had happened is Howe had left his small group up in Princeton, and Washington could take his men, take Princeton, and now he's got Howe surrounded. He's got this like whole. Oh, and there's also a bunch of artillery or weapons available to him up further north from Princeton that he wants to get a hold of.
There's a Bass Pro Shop in Princeton.
There is. Did they have to take a federal ID check to get?
No, it was before.
Okay, all right. Well, good thing. Good thing.
Yeah.
The British would not have accepted any sales.
No.
Anyway, so they so they sneak around. They sneak around this road, heading up to Princeton. And Washington leaves behind several men to put up fires so that the British think that they're still there in camp. And the old fox, General Washington, once again outfoxes Howe, and they sneak up and around. Now here's the issue. They were going.
Well, dude, does he see this is the thing? Does he outfox him? No, the thing is, the British by this time have had a professional standing army for about 100 years,
Okay.
right? Since our last episode about the levelers, right? So they've had a standing army for 24 years by this time.
Right.
So it wasn't a matter of being outfoxed. They had regulations. They were trained. They were taught. There's things you don't like. The whole thing about we're going to march in a line and face off against you because
Right.
why? That's the gentlemanly way to go to war. There were literal manuals written, right? You don't hide behind trees. That's cowardly. You don't hide behind, stone walls. That's cowardly. You stand in a line. You let your enemy stand in a line. You fire, then the people behind you step up. And so how it wasn't even that he was outfoxed. He was just a British being British.
Right.
This is what we do. This is how we fight battles.
Right.
And so, I mean, there's a great advantage to the fact that our guys were just farmers. I'm not a soldier. I haven't been taught the right way to kill someone in a battle.
Right.
The right way is whatever way I'm able to do it, so I get to go back home to the farm.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So that my wife doesn't sleep a widow tonight.
Exactly.
That's how we get it done. But Howe and all of those guys, their deal was nope, you do not break protocol. You never violate the
Mhm.
code of military conduct. Even if it
To your detriment.
if you end up suffering because of that, guess what? You suffered, but it was a noble suffering.
Honorably.
Yeah, it was an honorable defeat.
Right.
At least you didn't not only get defeated militarily, but morally as well. Right? Whereas the Americans, they're not playing by the correct rules.
No, they're not. And they also by the way, I want to just back up a little bit because I started to talk about that they were struggling to keep the men there.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite remarkable. Washington first, offered him money to stay for
$1 million.
$1 million. $1 million. And then, and the drums sound and nobody steps forward. Not one person.
And then they started playing Jump Around by House of Pain.
And oh yeah, it was over then.
They all signed up.
Jump around, jump around. They then, but then Washington turned back and he, frankly talked to them as men. Like he was like,
Yeah.
"This is for your freedom. This is for your liberty. I understand. I can't ask any more of you than what you've already given, but I'm going to ask you to stay for one more month for this cause, and I know it will be worth it." I mean, that's basically was his message to the men. And one by one, almost all of them re-upped for another month, which again shows the courage.
That's why he is the indispensable man.
That is why.
Lots of people were better generals.
Yeah. Yeah. But he was able to.
Including Hugh Mercer.
Including Hugh Mercer, which, by the way, this next attack was this was also in his tent. Probably his idea to get out, out from under. There are people that make that claim that Hugh Mercer was the tactical brains of these 10 days that changed history. So they head up to Princeton, and General Washington gives General Mercer his 400 flying camp. He kind of pushes them up ahead. I wouldn't say a scouts, more as like a first. Maybe it was more
Like to soften the beach.
Yeah. That was kind of his job. And as they're heading north, the men in Princeton, the British in Princeton, begin to head south to reinforce the Howe's army in Trenton. Well, that would have worked out great, except for they saw each other.
Yep.
They saw each other, and
Hey, wait.
hey, you're wearing the wrong coat. You ain't no red. Anyway, Hugh and his men are heading for a bridge to try to secure a bridge. And the British come and they see him and they attack. And another important thing is that the Americans at this time, the reason why Washington wanted to get up to that armament is they had lost a lot of rifles. I think there was one bayonet for every 5 men.
Basically, if both sides were, because both sides had had ammunition
Right.
shortages, right? The British had plenty of weapons, but a gun without a bullet's a club,
Right.
unless you stick a knife on the end,
Right. And then it becomes.
and then you've taken a club to a knife fight.
Yes, you have.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what happened. That's essentially what happened many times to the Americans was once we run out of bullets, so to speak, ammunition, well, that's done because the British have bayonets.
Right.
And so you've got to retreat or it's going to be a crimson pulpy stain.
Right. So, the British take aim and they fire 3 volleys into Mercer's men, and they retreat. They retreat quickly, and this is the moment where I'm going to make my case, Brother Joey, that the entire American enterprise held in the balance, because if they retreat and those British get on the backside of Washington, it's could be curtains. It could be a bad problem for the Americans. So Hugh is trying to rally the troops. He's trying to tell. He's stand your ground.
Hold until relieved.
That's right. He gets his horse shot out from under him.
Jeez.
I know. Poor guy can't catch a break.
Cannot catch a break.
By the way, I've thought about this. This is another area where, well, let me finish the story first. He stands up and he's telling the men to hold their ground, hold their ground. He's on foot now, and he turns and there are 7 to 8 redcoats coming towards him, and they mistake him as Washington.
Hey, we've got him. We've got Washington.
They
I get dibs on his teeth.
By the way, and this is my point.
Because British people have bad teeth.
They all have bad teeth.
I got dibs on his teeth. Oh, they're made of wood. Oh, never mind then.
I think this is another, I'm going to call it a miraculous moment, in the sense that if they thought that was Hugh Mercer, I think that bought Washington more time. Or if they thought Hugh Mercer was Washington,
yes,
that bought Washington. Washington hears the shots and he immediately comes. He starts to make his way, but he's still far away.
Right.
And but the British are now all focused on Hugh Mercer, and they start yelling at him, "Get the traitor! Get the traitor!"
Because they think they've got George Washington. And if they got, man, you want to be that dude.
Yeah.
If you're a British soldier,
yeah,
and you want to be the dude that brings the head of Washington. You want to be. Sure. I mean, you would it'd be like like in the Super Bowl. You score a touchdown. No, the equipment guy's not getting this ball.
Right.
No. This is going in daddy's case at home.
That's right.
You're not putting this in the chest with the rest of the stuff. So you want to be the guy. You want to roll up to, George III and be like, look what I got. Yeah. Except the teeth. I took the teeth. And George III's like, that's not George Washington. What? That's Hugh
Hugh
Mercer.
Mercer.
And he's like,
Ah.
but then whose teeth do I have? Hugh Mercer's, idiot.
It's like, come on, man.
But why were they so loose? I don't know. Because you punched him in the face with the butt of your rifle.
Right.
I don't have to do all the thinking just because I'm king. But God chose you, the shimmery lady from the lake, bestowed upon you absolute sovereign power, and declared you to be king of all the Britons. Who are the Britons? We're all Britons. Oh, all right then. But who names you king? Who voted for you? No one votes for king. Oh, I didn't vote for you. No one votes for king. Oh, how'd you become king then?
Keep going, Monty.
No, I stopped.
But that's good. That's good stuff.
It is good.
It's good.
All right, go ahead. So they think they got.
So they think they got.
G-dub.
They think they got the main man, and they're yelling, "Get the traitor! Get the traitor!" And Hugh Mercer stands up in his glory and says, "I am no traitor." Pulls out his sword, because that's all he's got, and starts fighting off the British single-handedly, giving Washington more time to come down and buoy up, which Washington does. Washington comes down, he revives his men, and Hugh Mercer, in the meantime, has taken butts to the head and big butts to the head and 7
bayonet
strike to his torso, and is left for dead.
This part when I was reading this, I'm like, left for dead.
Right.
They figure out that's not George Washington. Dang it!
I think that's.
And they're just like, we got to find him because we already told someone we killed George Washington. Well, if we can find him before,
By the way, I can totally see the because by the way, this is the famous story that we've heard of George Washington rallying the troops, riding his horse in between the British and American army. The British are taking shots at him and cannot hit him. They've got point blank range and they cannot hit him. And the only reason, Master Joey, the only reason that Washington even had a chance to have that miracle happen is he had one man stand up in between his men and gave him time to rally the troops and bring him home. And that man was Brigadier General Hugh Mercer.
Or you can, that's an awesome story, man. But tell the, Paul Harvey this business.
Okay. So he's
left for dead.
He's left for dead. There he is.
Who does that?
He's left for dead.
I've got a thing to do.
His men come upon him and find him. And guess what?
Whoa. How many? Yeah. They come upon. Yeah, you're right. They come upon him. But even that, you're like, came upon him?
Right. They find him laying there.
Yeah. He's just like dead, essentially. I mean, he looks dead.
He looks dead, but they revive him enough to say, hey, we need to get you to this house to get taken care of. And he's like, I must see my men victorious on the field. And so it's so brilliant. He's so good.
He's got a good line. He delivers good lines.
He does, even if you can't understand him.
Right. At the time, they're like, you bleed the hen in Spurious? What?
Right.
Oh, I see my man. What? Come on, man. Speak English.
So he,
maybe that's why he's not more known, because we just can't understand what
he's saying. We had to wait for the
English translation.
English translation to come out 300 years later.
Scottish to English translation. I can't do a Scottish accent. If I could, I would, but I can't.
I can't do any accent, so I will. Everything will sound mumbled. Anyway, so they hear his request enough to set him up against a broad oak. Broad oak tree.
I mean,
seriously, can you imagine? Like,
there's no such thing as a man on planet Earth today. You got rattlesnake hiding in an empty tree, right?
Oh,
you got just like taking bullets, doing the whole thing, going on his 100 miles through the wilderness. this, horse shot out from under him.
Right?
I mean, holding off so Washington taking bayonets to the body, butts of the gun to the head, and he's like, I must see my men victorious. And then they're like, no, bud, you're hurt. Let's take you to the hospital. Let's get you back.
No heed. Set me.
He's like, find a broad oak. Where can I find a broad oak? What? You need the red coat. No, a broad oak. Bread soaked? A broad oak. You idiot. A broad oak. But I mean, think about that. There's literally not a human male on this planet that qualifies for the designation man if Hugh Mercer is the standard we use to measure it.
Amen. That is a fact.
Put me against a tree so I can watch my men win as I bleed out.
Right? By the way, he does live for a bit.
9 days? What do you mean a bit? My man lived 9 days.
It gets better because the immortal. So, which doctor do we all hear about?
Seuss.
Yeah,
Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss was
there. Dude.
Dr. Rush was there. Benjamin Rush was there, and he's the one that's taking care of Hugh Mercer. Now, Hugh Mercer has some medical knowledge. Right?
He is a doctor.
He's a doctor. And Hugh Mercer is saying, don't worry about my wounds. It's my head that's the problem.
Yeah, he's like, I'll coagulate. I'll be fine with all of this. I'm pretty confident with the bleeding. But there's some cranial issues we need to address. No. I said I'm fine.
Right.
Nope.
And Rush
we just want to put a Band-Aid on what. Nope. No, I'm good. Let that go ahead and wash out. It's closed system will be fine. Let it wash out.
Here, I'm pointing to the problem.
It's my head.
It's my head.
Head. No. And
by the way, and the another part of the story during this time, what is it? Washington's nephew, I think. Anyway, one of the men is like the LeBron James of the Americans, where they're crying foul because they think like the Hugh Mercer was done wrong and that he should have been given quarters.
Oh yeah, well, explain what that means.
Okay,
should we throw quarters at him? He deserved to have some money thrown.
Essentially, you're like, I give. I'm a
yes.
officer.
It was in the code of military conduct,
right?
That if someone of a certain rank and a senior officer, which Mercer was as a general, a senior officer, if he asks for for quarter, meaning timeout, you give him timeout. That's the rule. It sounds stupid to us because it's stupid.
Right.
But that's what the manual, they'd had 120 years of the manual. If a senior officer of the enemy asks for timeout and you take it, you don't kill him, you escort him, you give him aid, you give him food, you give him comfortable lodgings. Now he's a prisoner, don't get me wrong, but he gets to be treated in a way merited by his status,
which makes sense, especially I mean if you think about it from like a royalist point of view, because likely that person asking for quarters might be your cousin.
Yeah, in the British Army, that's little Lord Fauntleroy's son, and if you don't treat him right, when you get back home, your blacksmith shop is gonna be shut down. So yeah, it makes sense. But he's like, he could have. And the guy is saying,
well, the British did him wrong.
The British did him wrong by stabbing him a lot.
So okay, we're gonna up his manhood even up further, because this was what he said.
What Mercer said when he hears that the guy says, "The British did you wrong, man."
He said,
"You're a general. You should have got safe passage to somewhere."
Right. He declares, "The tale which you have heard, George, is untrue. My death is owing to myself. I was on foot, endeavoring to rally my men who had given way before the superior discipline of the enemy, when I was brought to the ground by a blow from a musket, At the same moment, the enemy discovered my rank, exulted in their having taken the rebel general, as they termed me, and bid me ask for quarters. I felt that I deserved not so opprobrious an epithet, and determined to die. As I had lived an honored soldier in a just and righteous cause, and without begging for my life or making reply, I lunged with my sword at the nearest man. They then bayoneted me and left me.
So the British did what the man. Well, hold on. I don't know. Page what? What page is it with the? If we've got a general with a lot of wounds.
432.
432.
Section B.
You shall. Oh, hold on. You shall ask the ruffian general, rebel. Sorry, I'm not a good reader. Rebel general, if he'd like a dime. No, it's a quarter.
Quarter.
A quarter. If he'd like quarter, ask. Hello, general. Yeah, all right then. Would you like a quarter? Could we give? Would you like just a little bit? A quarter. I've got some change. Yeah, all right then. And so Hugh Mercer. So the British did what British people do, which is be British. Which there's a lot of words you could substitute for British, but we're not allowed to say them because we'll get canceled. But you know what I'm talking about. Any road. So Hugh Mercer says, "No, I don't want quarter. I want to stab you with my sword.
With my sword.
If I'm going to die, I'm not going to die bleeding out in some British, hospital or British tent.
Right.
I'm going to bleed out while I take a couple of you with me to the other side of the veil.
That's right.
And we'll continue this over there."
That's exactly right. I'm telling you, like when I read that, it was just.
I mean, yeah.
Talk about the icing on the cake.
That ratchets the manly up. It's kind of, yeah. It makes you. I felt a distinct decrease in my testosterone.
Right.
Yeah. I felt like, I don't know, that makes you feel unmanly.
It really does.
Because if put me up against a broad oak, you better take me to a hospital, man, and you better be the closest one. And if I come anywhere close,
I'm blaming you.
And when I get out, of the hospital, I'm taking the next year off to recuperate.
Exactly.
It took him 9 days to bleed out. Dude, you know what it was? It was all the whiskey.
It probably was. From the Red Dawn.
Whiskey, no. Risky sow? Is he wanting to eat? Whiskey, no. But I mean, all of that, and being a doctor and being like, yeah, it's not this, it's this. And doctor's like, I got you. I'm a doctor. Really, chemotherapy?
Mr. Ben?
Can I see your diploma there, Marcus Welby? Because I'm starting to doubt.
I'm telling you, it's ahead. I mean, the whole thing is
okay. All I want to say, I want to go on record that when the big igloo comes down, if I get stabbed, please prop me up against a broad oak.
I'm with you. Please.
Broad oak, no. Prop me up against a broad oak. Now I'm doing a Scottish. I got it.
By the way,
I got it. I got my Scottish.
You got your Scottish on.
I got it. It came to me, man. It came to me.
And
General Mercer is here.
He is. He's in the building.
Here's my story.
I want to hear it again.
I want to hear my story again.
But listen, I fell in love with this guy so much so that I'm writing a musical about him.
That's the big news right there.
That is
one day you're going to see a musical named Mercer instead of Hamilton.
That's right.
Well, it won't be called Mercer. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, it'll be better than Hamilton. I'm going to tell you that right now. Stay tuned.
Yeah, because Hugh Mercer's worthy of his story being told. Alexander Hamilton got what he deserved.
Right. And I will say, like, even coming on this podcast, talking about him, kind of makes me nervous just because like I want to do justice by
Oh man,
him.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I think he's the kind of guy that's like, I appreciate you, Mike, but if his story doesn't get told, he's fine. But I think it doesn't say anything about him.
Right.
It says something about us if we don't tell his story.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we've tried to do that tonight.
We did.
Tell the story, but also, I mean, you're musical. I mean, I've seen little snippets of some of the songs. Oh my gosh, dude! Some of these songs, I'm not even kidding. Literally crying when
dude, I appreciate that, man. Yeah. I'm telling you guys, like, you got. There are more Hugh Mercers out there. I believe. I mean, I don't think there's just one Hugh Mercer. Honestly, like, I don't think there's anybody like. What's the Park and Recs guy, the Ron Swanson pyramid of manliness.
Yeah.
Hugh Mercer is at the top. Okay. I mean,
Jesus.
Okay, well.
No, I'm just saying.
You got me there.
I'm not. I mean, even at the pyramid of War for Independence greatness, I mean, he's up. He's definitely in the pantheon. I'm going to give you that. Definitely deserves a place in the pantheon of American revolutionary heroes.
And I love the aspect of, if you think about his life, from Culloden, where he lived, survived, but the cause was lost. And then he ends up in Princeton, having sacrificed all for a cause that we are now still celebrating and hopefully reviving here on the old pod here. But like, that symmetry to me, like it hit me like as one of those spiritual moments of like, he was meant to be at that place at that time for this reason. And I recognize that, and I appreciate you, brother.
No, I think that you did a great. I mean, honestly, with no hint of humor, the service you did to his memory is noble and marked by me, at least, and I'm sure other people too that see this. They'll be. I mean, it's got to feel good, man, that that someone's going to watch this, and whatever day people watch it, someone will be talking about Hugh Mercer that before hearing your story tonight didn't know who he was.
Dude,
that's a big deal, because that person who hears it might be the mother or father of a young man who they decide to tell that young man that story. And we don't know that he's not the next Hugh Mercer. But for you telling the story, it would have gone untold.
Thank you, brother. Guys, you're listening to the greatest podcast ever, where we talk about, yes, greatness.
All right. Keep some powder dry. Till next time, y'all.